What's up, everybody? Thanks for being here today. We got a special guest on this episode. I think y'all are really going to enjoy this talk. We are speaking with the one and only Grant Campbell. He's an Australian ultramarathon runner and long-term raw vegan. I first met Grant at the 2024 Woodstock Fruit Festival in the salsa dancing class that he was instructing. Great instructor, by the way. Then he and I had a conversation over a dinner meal one night, and that's what really got me starting to think that I should get this guy on the show. He's got a really cool story to share. So we're going to get into his ultramarathon career, how he fuels up for his races, what type of footwear he likes to use, and we're going to discuss his adventure retreats that he hosts in Thailand during Durian season. Just a heads up, in the first little section of our interview, Grant's audio is pretty poor. So about 3 minutes in, I stopped and asked him to see if we could switch and get a better microphone, which he did. So please just bear with us for the first 3 minutes of sub-quality audio. As always, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to Radical Health. Enjoy the show. Radical Health! Got to throw the theme song in there. How you doing today, Grant?
I'm doing great, Seth. How are you doing?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much. We finally figured out the time difference between Thailand and Florida.
Yeah, it turns out it's a lot.
Yeah. So it's early in the morning for me. I just woke up, and then it's the end of the day for you. You're about to retire.
Yeah, it's just gone dark here. So,
and what part of Thailand are you in?
In the south of Thailand, in Nakhon Si Thammarat, actually.
Okay. And what's in season right now, food-wise?
Well, the durian is early, but it's still everywhere, but it's nothing like what it's going to be here in peak season.
And when does that peak then?
It depends year to year. Like last year, there was a really weird season. It's generally a 2-month season, basically at peak. But last year it had 1 month and then it had a gap month in between because of some weird thing happened with the rain and knocked flowers off, and then the second month came a month later.
Okay.
So this year, and that's the first time I've ever seen a split season like that in Thailand in all the years I've been coming here. So, but this year, they're saying we're going to have 3 months of durian from now for another 3 months. So.
Wow. And so are you kind of a durian freak? Are you eating it every day?
Here, most days, yes. But my partner Amara and I, we definitely value having days off from it. So we've had chompadek kind of days. We even did some days where we just had coconut water.
Yeah, I find durian can be really heavy. It's full of fat, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but just when I eat too much of it, and sometimes like 2 pieces can feel like too much to me.
Well, you must be getting the good stuff.
Maybe. I've never been to Southeast Asia to get it, completely fresh. One day.
It's completely different to have frozen durian or to just get old durian that hasn't been frozen, but it's obviously old if it's not. Given that durian, a lot of the flavors in durian only last for something like 2 to 4 hours, and they're completely disappeared.
Wow.
Off-gassed and gone. So there's there's a durian farm in Penang, Malaysia called the Baosheng Durian Farm, and they literally throw durians away if they're 6 hours old. They won't serve them to the customers. The customers are paying top dollar for top quality, and they just won't serve anything less.
And this is the point at which I asked Grant to try another audio setup. Back to the show. So that durian life sounds pretty nice. And the chompadek too. That's one thing I'm looking forward to enjoying when I finally get to Southeast Asia.
The chompadek's been incredible right here at the moment. It's actually more expensive than a lot of the durian here, but it's been really impressive.
Amazing. So Grant, I want to get into some other aspects of your lifestyle, especially the running. So you run ultramarathons, right?
Yeah.
Basically, I want to know, what is an ultra and how did you get into doing them?
Well, there's different definitions of ultra.
the classic one would be by distance. So anything longer than a marathon, which is 26.2 miles or 42.195 kilometers, which is the distance to a castle from some point to some castle officially. But I like the definition where it's by Yanis Kouros, one of the greatest runners of all time, who said ultra running is about going beyond the physical. So you're not just running with your muscle and and just toughing it out or whatever. There's something a lot more than that. And he says it's beyond mind, body, and spirit. To him, there's something else that he taps into that he can't explain.
And do you find that same energy that you're tapping into beyond the physical when you're running?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do think there's, I don't know if I would say it's beyond spirit, but I definitely find a sense of spirituality in it. And my definition of spirituality would be just being your true, authentic self without any kind of, you know, distractions, inhibitions, coping mechanisms, ego taking over, all those kinds of things that take you away from being yourself. When you're yourself in your heart, in your truth, with inner peace, I find it's a great way to tap into that space. Like when you kind of wake up in the morning, maybe you're a bit dreamy in the morning, and you're kind of half awake, half asleep, and you have all this creative flow, and you've got all this nerve energy from sleeping, and you might write poetry before you wake up, or come up with some lyrics for something, or solve some problem with work, or some challenge in your life, or have some insight or realization through being well rested, but also through being in a free spirit kind of state where you haven't had to get up and take on life's responsibilities yet, and you kind of it's just you and nothing else, and you being not your mind, which is a part of you, but your whole self. Even though you may be, not consider yourself in your full capacities because you're sleepy or not fully woken up yet, but actually I think you're possibly in a greater capacity in those moments.
Yes, indeed. And no one's making you run these ultra marathons. It's totally an individual decision. So this must be part of your authentic self. How did you get into doing these ultras and just running long distances in general?
It's a combination of things. I would say one, it's just it excited me. So that's something about me. I love a sense of adventure. I love going out and exploring trails. I love finding new trails. I love going somewhere and the challenge of trying to remember, like drop mental breadcrumbs so you can find your way back again in reverse through trails, and not turn around and say, wait, I don't recognize this. It's backwards, and feeling lost. So so I had good coaches. I had running coaches, and my grandfather was my first running coach, actually, and he took an interest and taught me to like have better running form and in various ways, and it just kind of went from there to different. I was never a great runner, but I got into running. Basically, I went vegan. I had more energy, and I noticed I started doing more things, more active things. I became a lifesaver, like a volunteer lifeguard in Australia on the beaches, and I started swimming squads, 2-hour squads, 6 or more times a week, and I started running, going to local track training with coaches, and I thought, wow, this vegan diet's amazing. It was a cooked vegan diet, and I thought this must be it. This is I'm doing more. This is great. But then I went raw vegan 6.5 years later, and I was like, oh wait, this is a completely different, totally profound experience, where I wasn't just doing more, but I was like having to look for more to do, because whatever I was doing was like I wanted more. Like I was like awake and alert and had all this energy and just felt amazing and had this like lust for life to just go and do more things, rather than just as a cooked vegan. It was like an observation. Wow, I'm doing more. This is great. As a raw vegan. It was like a fruit based raw vegan with like fresh food raw vegan, not a high fat, not a processed raw vegan. um, I just like I just felt awake for the first time in life. I felt hydrated for the first time in life, and I just started doing more. So I got into ultra running as a cooked vegan, as part of doing more, but I suffered. I had slow recovery, and I'd do 100-kilometer race, and I couldn't walk properly for a week. I couldn't run for a week. I'd be like just walking slowly around and getting up and down very slowly, and couldn't really do much. But then as a raw vegan, like I run like races much longer and like 100 miles or more, and the next day I can still run at like at least 80% capacity. So it's a completely different recovery is a huge factor in eating fruit based raw vegan, and part of the reason I think why I just embraced ultra running more and more and more was because it helped me to find myself and discover myself. Not that I was really looking, but it certainly took me on a spiritual kind of self journey, because you're running for hours and hours alone with no one to distract you but yourself. um, and I would sing a lot of songs, and meaningful lyrics would come into my head about what I was feeling or experiencing in those moments. And um, I don't know, I'd just play things over in my head. I had hours and hours and hours to play things over in my head about life, the universe, and everything. And it was really, I guess it's that meditation time that a lot of people seek, where they just sit down and say, I'm meditating now. Or I would go out and run for hours, and it felt great.
That's amazing. I love how it coincided with your shift to a raw vegan lifestyle, because that's what people say across the board when they switch over is they say, I have so much more energy and so much more like lust for life, like you said, wanting to do more, able to do more, sometimes needing to sleep less. And so we have actually more time in the day to live and do things that we love.
Yeah, I would maybe explain it slightly differently, a different perspective perhaps of the same thing, but having to recover less from eating your food. Because
I
I
noticed
think,
that.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I personally noticed that. I'm not completely raw, but I've been vegan for 3 years and doing high raw for that whole time.
Hmm.
And I also noticed that when I eat cooked food, I'll have a dinner maybe that's cooked, that's heavy, that's complex, and I just feel tired the next day. I'm feeling sluggish, and I know for sure that that's recovery, literally just from one meal.
Yeah, you can measure your waking heart rate to see that it's recovery, that you're not recovered, because your heart rate will be faster. Your pulse will be
Mm,
faster in the morning when you wake up. It won't be your normal waking pulse.
interesting. Yeah, and I
Mhm.
notice when I either skip dinner or have a light one, or just don't feel hungry and I don't eat, or I'll have some fruit or a light salad. Yeah, I can get up the next day, no problem. There's no heaviness. There's no bags under my eyes. There's
Yeah.
so yeah, recovering just from food, it actually is pretty profound. I don't think people think of it that way. We're slamming food all day, and we go to the gym and we physically exert, and we mostly think we're recovering from all the physical activity we're doing, overlooking the food aspect. So, how long have you been doing raw vegan? I hesitate to say the word diet, so lifestyle.
Yeah, it's much more than a diet for sure. Um, I went raw vegan in November 2005. So that's like more than
Coming up
18
19
years.
years.
Yeah, coming up 19 years. Yep. I went vegan in 1999. So midway through 1999.
Wow. Okay. No protein deficiency yet.
No protein deficiency. I figure if I can run for, 30, 35 hours without sleeping and cover 140 miles or 250 kilometers, I think I'm good for protein.
Okay. So tell me about that. Was that your longest race?
Yeah, I've done. I guess I've done two races that are kind of longer than a lot of the other ones. One I ran across England in a race called the Sea to Sea, which is it's there's a pathway, a bicycle path across from the Irish Sea to the North Sea, up near the Scottish border, but it's still in England. and you run from the west coast to the east coast. So you touch the water on one side and touch the Irish Sea on one side and run to the North Sea on the other side.
And how long
And
is
it's
that, the distance?
250 kilometers, which I believe is 140, around 140 miles, somewhere around there. I don't remember exactly.
250 kilometers to 155 miles.
155 miles. Okay, so it was
That's what you
155
ran.
miles. Yeah, and it took
Wow. And
me 34 hours 52 minutes, and I finished with a sprint with a guy that became a friend through that race, and and he decided that we were going to suddenly start running hard with about 800 meters to go. After running for almost 35 hours without sleeping, he's like, come on, let's put it in. Let's put in a good, strong finish. And the race director has a good sense of humor. So it finishes with an uphill, like a 40-degree incline or some like almost impossible incline just for the last 30 meters. And so we ran hard for like somewhere around, I think I'm sure it was not far off 800 meters. And then up this hill. And I just remember running stride for stride next to this friend, raising our knees as high as we can, just running and just like feeling like life and death at the same time. And then very
wow.
grateful to be finished.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. And what is your food intake during this time and maybe leading up to the race as well?
Yeah. Let me choose one race then as a benchmark. Maybe like say I ran 100 miles. I ate um, 18 kilograms of mango, and
Okay.
that gave me 14 liters of water from the mango. So I got most of my water from my fruit, and then I drank another 10 liters on top of that.
All right. For my American listeners, 18 kilograms is almost 40 pounds.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
one large mango can be like 4 pounds, but that's a pretty large mango.
They were large mangoes. They were R2E2 mangoes from Australia.
Wow.
I think they were like 800 grams, like less than 2 pounds a
Okay.
piece, but not too far off it.
So that's like 20 mangoes. And are you carrying those with you, or are there people along the side of the race, waiting to
So
help feed you?
yeah, so that race had checkpoints. It was a point to point race, so you don't keep going around laps around one track or something. So there was an aid station about every 18 miles, 30 kilometers, somewhere around that. And then you would get to that aid station and or checkpoint, and you can pick up a drop bag that you at the start of the race you can put a drop bag to be left, and they take them out to each checkpoint for you, and
Nice.
then you can pick up whatever is in that. So I've put bananas inside containers, Tupperware containers, and by the time I get there 24 hours later to some aid station far down in the race, there's puddles of black Cavendish left in the. But most of the time it works pretty well.
Nice. Well, sometimes the black bananas are the tastiest.
Yeah, indeed. That particular race, I was thinking about the just picking up the banana sludge residue in my fingers was just as sweet and delicious as they would have been if they were still intact. So it didn't. I just needed the calories at that moment, and yeah, always from fruit. I tried eating like avocado, things like that, in a races a long time ago. In between kind of fruit meals, and it just slowed me down, and it didn't feel good. So I gave away on that idea. Seems pretty obvious now. To obviously low fat is high carb, low fat is definitely the way to perform your best. And yeah, I tried like even having savory meals sometimes because I would go out and eat a lot of. I used to eat. I used to listen to a lot of things other people said, right? And it doesn't all apply.
Hmm.
But people would sometimes say, "Oh, you've got to like if you can eat during an ultra, you should eat. Like if you can keep food down, you should eat." Like that kind of mentality. And so I was just smashing down dates, and I'd be eating like I don't know ridiculous amounts of dates in a short number of hours earlier in the race. But then many hours later, I was maxed out on sweet, and then I would start dipping low on calories and need to eat again. But I actually was completely unattracted to eating more sweet because I'd smashed so many in early in the race. And so I found myself in some races where I had food that I didn't want to eat. And dates was a large part of those examples back then.
That goes to tell me that the fruits that contain the water are really the key, the fresh, whole fruits. I mean, dates are a whole food. They're a bit dry, but to me, I just look at a mango or a banana and I see how perfect it is. It's not only contained within its own packaging that'll protect it from the elements and, keep it alive, but it just has the perfect amount of carbohydrate, water, and even fat and protein to sustain us and to fuel us.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
And so fresh fruits are the majority of your fuel these days and for races, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Fresh fruits and juicy fruits. I only eat dried fruit if I have to. Like if, I can't carry a watermelon for 100 miles if there's no, if there's no support along the way. If I'm running around a track for hours, for 24 hours, I can have watermelon available at every lap, and I can race on watermelon. And
Mm-hmm.
watermelon, at first, like for many years, I thought that it wouldn't be enough calories, but actually, you can race just on watermelon and run 100 miles no problem, as long as you eat enough to sustain yourself. And the other thing I kind of realized over the years was because I did trend to eating less calories as the years of ultramarathons went by, and getting better results eating less calories.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't under eating. I was just eating. I was just learning what was enough and how to pace myself better with eating, not just smashing it all in at the start of the race, but pacing myself and letting myself kind of get empty and then eat more, and finishing races on empty as well. So like not finishing with still with food in my stomach or food but like literally like just going to the end and then being completely like an empty tank of fuel at the end of the race. So
How
I
good does that
carried.
feel to sit down finally and eat something and
Oh
just
my
sit there?
goodness, it's phenomenal. The first race that comes to mind when you ask that question, I ran this crazy race that no one had ever finished before in Australia, and I finished it. But I'd had two other attempts where I'd failed with various people that I tried to complete it with, just recreationally. And this time that I finished it, I did it by myself. And when I finished, I was so tired and so hungry and so thirsty. I didn't know what to do first. Like I was like I just needed to do everything all at once. But sleep took priority
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't even think about eating because I was so tired, even though I needed to eat. So I slept, and then when I woke up, I drank a bunch of water, and then I ate a bunch of food of like whatever fruits I had. I forget what it was on that particular day, but bananas or mangoes or something like that. Yeah, and the other thing that I do race on, for races like that are kind of like more than 100 miles or at least 100 miles would be like just using some celery. And again, it's hardy. Like you're saying that the bananas can like they're packaged to look after themselves, to be carried around. And celery, I can just stick a stalk of celery in the waist of my running pants and can run with it for a few hours, and it still holds its freshness and it's resilient, and it's just there to give me that extra bit of kind of minerals whenever I feel the need for some extra. But I find generally I don't need to do that because I eat salads regularly. I found that I didn't need to do that as I went on through the years as a fruit-based raw vegan. I started recognizing more the importance of eating like leafy greens and other salad kind of stuff, which are richer in minerals per bite than fruit is. And I do think it's important to do that. I think it's probably possible to maybe get by just eating fruit if you had like super volcanic soil and everything was perfect, like tree ripened fruit from old trees and all this kind of stuff. But and maybe it's possible to get enough minerals and that way. But I think it's smartest to balance a fruit based diet with a good amount of vegetables.
Yeah, me too. And people talk about the minerals and electrolytes, especially for runners, as being crucial to sustaining the energy. And you're saying, that comes right in the celery. And so, what do you say to people who, well, maybe you don't need to say anything, but if they're curious and they're using gel packs and Cliff Bars and like electrolyte powder, and water, and coming at it from a little bit more of a packaged artificial side, and then looking at what you're doing, you know, well, first, I guess, have you had anybody really curious about that and get inspired by what you're doing that's in the running scene?
Yeah, a ton of people. In fact, almost like anyone that's serious about getting better, they're open to ideas, unless they've already kind of tried it and didn't have success, and then they could be quite closed to it. But I find that I'm running these races, and early in the race, maybe you get a bit chatty and you want to talk to other runners, and even though it's kind of a waste of energy to do that from a race perspective, but I really love connecting with the other runners. So we'll start talking, and they can see what I'm eating. A lot of them maybe have heard of the way I eat already, because especially in Australia, where you see the same people at different races all around the place. So um, they start, you get a reputation or whatever, and so they get curious, and they ask questions, and I've known incredible runners that are way better than I've ever been, and they take it on and try it, but it's not enough for them to just have a conversation with me and then go out and do it. They don't really know what they're doing. They don't have any frame of reference for it. They've never sat down and watched people eat meals one after the next through all the seasons of the year, and to see what it's like to eat, you know,
Mm,
fruit-based raw vegan, like hygienically, aligned with kind of the principles of natural hygiene and the healthy lifestyle principles, and balanced with getting enough sleep, and doing all that like personal development work that's so imperative, that makes this kind of a lifestyle more than just a diet. Because the diet on its own doesn't get you there. It can get you performance benefits, sure, but if you're still poisoning yourself in other ways, then it's still kind of sabotaging your success.
indeed. Yes, it's a whole lifestyle package. And I think that's why a lot of the fruit festivals have helped me, because I can meet people like you. I can meet other people who are more experienced in the raw vegan lifestyle and learn from them, and also learn from the festival itself, what they have set up there. And I want to ask you about that. But first, still while we're on the topic of racing, I want to ask about your footwear, because I just put out an episode. My last Radical Health episode is called Shoes Are Destroying Your Feet, the Problems and the Solutions. And I outlined the issues with most modern shoes that come to a point in the tip of the toes, and then everyone's feet, get messed up, and we get bunions and deformities. And so the barefoot running shoes have become very popular. And I understand that's what you choose to run in, right? Can you tell me about your footwear a little bit?
Yeah, I've run in Five Fingers exclusively, like Vibram Five Fingers exclusively for like since 2009. So it's at 14, 15 years. As I transitioned into those, I was already running ultras before that. So as I transitioned into that, there was races where I carried both shoes, and I would carry I'd carry my shoes with me in case I couldn't handle the Five Fingers. Like when if the arches of your feet get tired and you still have 50 miles to go, it's an ugly situation. So I kind of did that, but I adapted my feet slowly. First doing like a 10K, then doing like a marathon, and then like a 90K race, and then I did 100 miles in Five Fingers and on road, which is a harder surface, and I was fine, and I recovered fast, and that was all eating fruit-based raw vegan by that time. So it took just what's that, like 4 years after going raw vegan, that I switched my footwear to kind of match the lifestyle. Seems to be a trend. where you want to feel the ground more and have more of an experience where your feet are getting the sensitivity of touching, feeling the earth in some sense, even though there's a bit of a layer between you and the ground. It's like, my hands like the feel of things. They like to touch things, and so do my feet. And I find that when you step on sharp things in the five fingers, because it's such a thin sole, it can really hurt, and you feel like you've bruised yourself and bruised the bone, and you might sort of wince, like ow. But then I just keep running, and 5, 10, 15 minutes later, there's like no residual of anything there, and it never becomes a bruise or anything that bothers me. So I don't know what's happening with that, but I've heard other people like Alan and Jeanette Murray Wakeland that ran around Australia as raw vegans in their husband and wife in their 60s. And they wore five fingers, and she used to talk about running and spraining her ankle, and she would just kind of keep running, and it would never swell up, and it didn't ever amount to anything because all the circulation and the foot's kind of feeling the earth. And I don't know, people's feet do get destroyed by wearing regular footwear because when you're barefoot, your toes actually grip the ground, or grip the inside of your minimal footwear.
Mm-hmm.
They actually engage, and if you do that with your hand on something, you can feel it, like the top of your hand, like the back of your hand, a whole bunch of stuff in there, tendons or whatever. I don't know what specifically, but it gets engaged. And they say there's 100. I think I read once there's like 150 parts in your foot that get used when you're barefoot that basically don't get used when you're in a what minimalist footwear wearers would call foot coffins. Just like a regular shoe, which usually has elevated heels. You basically your foot's just kind of wrapped up in a bandage and just going along as though it's injured, like hobbling along and not really doing much other than touching the ground and coming back up again. It's not really going through all of its full range of function.
Yeah, absolutely. Shoes really turn our foot into a club, and they kind of make all the toes atrophy a little bit. Like, obviously you have you can jump off your toes, you can have a little bit of mobility and strength there, but they do make a lot of the muscles in the foot atrophy, and they kind of just squish all the toes together and turn it into a club. Once I woke up to that, I was just very sad, actually, that we do this to ourselves as a culture. And I actually needed some processing time to emotionally process just the weight, the gravity of the situation. It's like everyone's foot binding themselves. This is weird. Like, why are we allowing this? Why do the shoe companies with the biggest budgets make the narrowest shoes? They can study the human foot all day, and somehow they don't know that there's a wide toe splay. It's supposed to have an arch. We're not supposed to support everything because that's like having crutches. And you saying the thing about, maybe stepping on something sharp, getting a sprain, but just running through it, your body is a magnificent self-healer. And when you're instructing it to align and just put the parts back into place, then it will pretty quickly adapt to that. Whereas, if you just rest it and ice it and stick it in a bandage, that's not quite normal in a way. So it's very interesting to use the Vibram 5 fingers. That's going to take a while before it catches on in fashion, just because people don't like the look of those. They're a little weird, but it's like, we're more after function. We don't really care about the fashion. And plus, when something's functional, it's cooler. So fashion automatically increases if you're not a slave to culture.
Yeah, and you've got to be confident with what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to be embarrassed, for having like frog feet or whatever people might joke about. But for me, like, I don't care because they're amazing, and I've done the experiments wearing footwear, and my legs are really sore after a race when I run in regular footwear, and I haven't done that for many, many years. But when I used to, like that transition period where I was switching back and forth a little bit, it was like night and day. Like I literally could run and feel great after a race in five fingers, or I could run in shoes and maybe I get more cushioning throughout the race. But for what purpose? I'm not enjoying the race as much because I can't feel the ground, and I take longer to recover. Um, I do have to grant though, there have been races where I've been running in 5 fingers, and it's say like very rocky terrain, like on a train line kind of, and other people have run through in their Hoka shoes, the big heavy cushioning kind of things, and they just run through there at high speed, and I'm going through kind of going like a little bit like ow ow ow, like just finding my way through at a slower pace. But I'd
Hmm.
much rather enjoy the experience and go at that pace, and then pick up the time in the rest of the race. Like I'm not there to just be the fastest. I'm there to have the most fun and still be there when I'm 100.
Mm. So, is the terrain usually natural and wild, or is it a lot of concrete in these long distance runs?
Well, when I ran across England, it was concrete road and concrete the whole way.
Okay, so does that affect your approach, or have you just learned how to not put too much pressure into the heel and you've learned how to just use your feet like the springs and shocks that they are?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I bought 5 fingers and walked out of the store, um, and was just walking down the street, not even running, I could feel my heel slamming into the concrete with
Right.
every stride. So immediately had to adapt my walking style to be a little bit more like falling forwards from the ankles, and just kind of picking your feet up behind you, like, and it's, so you're not heel striking, but because it doesn't it doesn't work to do that if you're barefoot or in minimal footwear. It just doesn't work because you'll end up with bruised heels, and that's a horrible experience.
Oh, and spinal issues too.
And all the whole gamut, and sore knee, bad knees, and they say, I read once, and I don't know how factual it is, but I read once in a book that when you're running and you're heel striking, that 7 times your body weight goes through your knees as a force when
Wow.
you're like slam. It's like slamming the brakes on, right? If you're running with your heels out in front of you, like stopping you with every stride, trying like you're running, so you're moving at speed, but then you're putting this braking system on, like putting a heel down, putting a heel down, putting a heel down every stride. It's insane, and
Yeah.
it's only appears to be functional because it's so cushioned that you can kind of, you don't really notice the braking system that's happening,
Hmm.
but it's there, and you take away the shoes, you can feel it.
Yes, there's definitely an adjustment period for people who want to ditch normal
Yeah,
shoes and get into the
and
barefoot life.
and you learn to like say I'm running along a road where the you know the or along gravel road, and the rocks are kind of sharp, then I instinctively will bend my knees to soften, and my hips and my knees will cushion the the sharpness of my feet on the ground, of my feet against
Hmm.
the sharp ground. Um, and it's just a normal thing. But in shoes, you don't notice any of those kind of things.
Yeah,
So
it's a
you
great
learn
point.
to soften, to be soft in your knees and hips, and when to do that, when not to do that, and just to automatically adjust as necessary, like you're just running through the jungle playing like a monkey.
Yeah. Now, do you ever run completely barefoot? Maybe if it's terrain you're familiar with, or do you ever ditch the Vibrams and just run totally barefoot?
Yeah, I certainly have, and I value and still do running barefoot. I don't know, like maybe like at least every 6 months or something like that for a while, just to keep my feet tough, like to keep them from being like soft and kind of vulnerable. I like them to be a little bit tough. They're still sensitive and they still feel everything, but they're just more resilient to the ground. And I once ran a 50 kilometer or 31 mile race completely barefoot along beaches in Australia. So it's just a sand run the whole time. And I, I, I believe I did my fastest ever half marathon time for the first part of that race, even though I wasn't even halfway yet in the race. So it was like 13.1 miles, or 21.1 kilometers. But then from that point, I started like feeling my feet a bit more. There was some deep sand sections where there was a lot of friction, so I would step, in the sand, and then your foot sinks into the sand. So there's all this friction against your foot with every step, and there was no other option other than go through it. So that was rubbing, like basically by the last kind of the final, like I think 15, 18 kilometers, something like that. I felt like my heel was going to come off. Like
Wow.
it was rubbing deep within, like maybe like about 8 millimeters, like 0.8 of a centimeter deep underneath. Like my whole heel was like, felt like it was going to come off. It was quite painful. Like a pad of my, like the whole pad of my heel. It felt like underneath that it was coming apart.
Oof.
Like it was like, nerves were being torn. Like it was like, I don't know. It felt like it was coming apart, and it probably doesn't take much for it to feel like that, but I'd never experienced that feeling before, and I didn't like it. It didn't feel healthy. It didn't make me feel happy. But I was there barefoot. I didn't carry any shoes, and I finished the race, but I slowed down a lot towards the end because it was hurting a lot, and it was
Wow.
both heels the same.
And you chalk that up to the sand mostly, right? You're saying, and
Yeah, it was
being
all the
barefoot.
friction. It was all the friction. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
running on sand
like
is tough.
I can run on roads barefoot for like maybe 3 to 5 kilometers, no problem. But not fast. Like if I run faster, then there's more friction, right? And it's more impact
Mm.
when you're hitting the ground. There's that friction, and so. But if I run slow and controlled, not slow, but like it's not fast. So like I don't know, like maybe like 6 minute K pace, whatever that is, 4 minute mile, or not 4 minute mile. Like what's that, about a 9 minute mile or something? I don't know. Um, Something like that. That I can run barefoot on roads, no problem. Hot roads, cold roads, doesn't really matter.
Right on. Yeah, I'm loving the barefoot life. I haven't found the best uh, sandals or shoes for myself yet, though. I don't. I've been. I think I've been
Mm.
traumatized into not enjoying shoe shopping, and to this day, even though I know what shoes I'm looking for and what I'm not looking for, I don't like going online and browsing these websites. You know what I mean? Something about it. I haven't found anything I like the look of or the feel of, and so most time I'm just barefoot.
Well, I had a friend who was an ultra runner in Australia, and he used to make his own sandals.
Oh wow.
And so he'd buy the rubber and cut it out to fit his foot, and then maybe have like a double layer of rubber, so the bottom layer kind of, so the knots of the that tie your foot onto the sole are like tied through the first layer of rubber, but then it doesn't go through the second layer of rubber, so the knots don't wear out against the road when you're running, right? So he'd
Mm-hmm.
build all these elaborate kind of shoes with all these like Roman sandal lace ups and all these kind of things. Um, and that to me was the most exciting, kind of the closest I ever got to having the perfect footwear, because five fingers are awesome, but they're not great for changing direction
Hmm.
or cornering, because they stretch. They're a stretchy fabric generally.
Hmm.
There are different models, but generally they're quite a stretchy fabric, and so you wouldn't play like football, like soccer, kind of football, sports like that where you're changing direction a lot. It's not really suitable for that,
Yeah, I hear
and it
that.
destroys the shoes as well, because it break the rubber will break away from the shoe, and the glue will come loose and weak, because it's all stretching
Interesting.
in ways it wasn't designed for. So and the criticism I have of Five Fingers is that it, like I always want to, unless I'm running in a really cold climate, I always want to be cooler when I'm running than what I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually run with no shirt on, and um, but and just having five fingers, even with thin socks, like I get, and I do wear the socks so that I makes me kind of blister proof. Um, as long as I keep the socks clean, not dirty. So if I run a long race, I'll change my socks maybe every, I don't know, 20 or 30 miles or something. Just if they're getting dirty with grit, with river sand, if I do river crossings or something like that. And that helps me not to get blisters. But I think the perfect thing is a sandal. It's not a shoe.
Right.
And just for cooling purposes, for me at least. And I have some ideas about it, what would be perfect, but I've never made it or had someone make it for me perfect. I have Zero shoes, the Z, what are they called? ZV Trail or EV Trail.
Okay.
I forget the name of it, but they're a type of Zero shoe, a sandal made by Zero Shoes, and they're awesome. But I just wear them for walking and just day to day kind of getting around. I haven't run races because I think if the front kind of catches on things, it folds underneath. It's not really an all terrain kind of solution.
Yeah, that's what I noticed is that the front toe of the flip flop can get caught on things or get
Right.
sand and little pebbles underneath there and just slows you down a little bit.
Yeah.
But well, thanks for all the tips about the running and the gear and the prep. That's pretty fascinating. I do want to ask, because we met at the Woodstock Fruit Festival this past winter, and you are commonly, invited to these fruit festivals to speak. So when you get invited to a fruit fest to speak, what do you like to present? Because you seem to have knowledge on a lot of topics. Do you like to go with the food angle, the exercise angle, or do you kind of like to present a package of the lifestyle, or do you like to switch it up and keep it interesting for yourself? Just give me a little bit about how you go about preparing and thinking for what to present at some of these fruit fests.
It's a great question. No one's ever asked me that one before. Um, I yeah, I feel like I've been privileged to go to so many fruit festivals and speak at so many festivals and to study with Doug Graham for so many years and became director of education for food and sport for a period of time. I've done a lot of cool things, and I like to share things with people that are interested. And at fruit festivals, people tend to be interested in almost everything that I am interested in. So that's really cool. But I tend to prefer to go deep. And what I find for me, the depth is not really about food. It's about the personal development stuff. It's about overcoming trauma. It's about not hiding from life. It's about facing problems. It's about not looking for shortcuts, but you know, doing the diligent kind of work to resolve whatever it is is holding you back in life. And yeah, I think like people often kind of blame diets for someone being overweight or some other health problem, but they don't look at the fact that there's a reason that they choose to eat a diet like that because they're suppressing things and they practice that their entire life, avoiding talking about the things that are sensitive for themselves and whether it's some sort of childhood traumas or abuse or whatever it might be, or insecurities, personal insecurities, or shyness, or whatever people suffer through, and and I find a lot of people don't kind of find that support in their normal life because their life is what led them to have the problems in the first place. So it's tricky to get out of it. So I love to talk about the things that people don't talk about and just put it all on the table. And I've done that through sharing my experiences and my insights and how I grew and developed. And as I learn more and more, I guess I try to share those things more generically in ways that maybe more people can adopt. Because I don't want to just only appeal to runners and or people think, oh yeah, 80-10-10, oh yeah, that just works for runners. Because it's not true. We all are designed, we're all frugivores. This is very clear that we're all frugivores. And anyone that's ever studied comparative anatomy and physiology and just from any angle, It's very clear that we're frugivores. So we're all designed to eat the same things, just in different quantities and ratios and seasonal differences and geographical kind of climactic differences. But it's the same foods. It's fruits and vegetables with maybe some nuts and seeds, and that's it.
Yep.
And it's raw, like every other creature on the planet. No creature, we can say we've been eating cooked food for thousands of years, but I see that more as a survival kind of thing. It's like, great, we can survive on cooked food. That's fantastic. But I'd rather not be in a survival situation. Why don't we just choose to thrive? We have the option. Why don't we eat the foods that we're designed to thrive on instead of eating foods that we can survive on?
Yeah, I definitely sense a big paradigm shift. Maybe it's just because I'm surrounding myself more with these types of people who share these ideas, or maybe it's the fact that I'm just changing my own life and seeing and changing my own brain and how I think about the world, going from a survival, even if it was subconscious, from a survival mindset to a thriving abundance mindset, where now I see that, wow, every herb bearing seed, shall be our meat. Like, it really is true, that plants, fruits, and vegetables give us everything we need. And it's also really sad just to see the overwhelming. I know you're not on social media as much. You have a YouTube channel, but there's
Yeah.
so much of the carnivore propaganda on Instagram, and it's wild. It's really wild to me. It's just kind of sad too, but everyone's got to come into this questioning and figuring it out on their own, and everybody takes a different path.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, there's some stuff that I watch, and I've seen how young people are influenced, like especially young men in the gyms, how they're the push to take steroids is just so so in their face everywhere they look. Everyone's massive, and they're all, at some point they get tempted by it and try it, but then it's kind of irreversible damage. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's terrible influences, and then the carnivore diet is no exception with that. It's absolutely, it's so absurd to even entertain the idea that, like, I couldn't debate that. It's nice to be able to win a debate on either side of the argument, right? Just by being good at debating and knowing the arguments of both sides. But it's really hard to. I mean, you can't have an intelligent debate and win if you're on the side of being a carnivore. That humans are carnivores, like, it's insane.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone thinks that they have the emotional capacity to walk up to an animal, a different animal every single day, and just tear its head off and like start eating it. That's completely unnatural, and unnecessary.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the gym. You mentioned the pressure that especially young men feel about wanting to get bigger. Do you incorporate strength training into your practice at all, or do you mostly just stick to running?
Yeah, I've done both, and a long time ago I went through this period where I just got better at running further and further and further and slower and slower and slower, and then I kind of like forgot how to sprint, and and I didn't like that I couldn't run. Like, I felt like I couldn't run a fast 5K anymore. So I remedied that and started getting back into running faster again and doing interval training, and I through my, I guess, mostly through my time with Doug Graham, because he's always lifting. Um, he would encourage me to get into deadlifting, and I swear deadlifting is the best strength activity I've ever done for running. Um, I remember doing a race, the Cascade Crest 100 miler, in near Seattle, in the Washington mountains, and I remember running. I think it was about 20 miles into the race already, and I felt great. And then I hit this long mountain climb, and I just felt like normally I would walk up that in such a, like a 100-mile race. I would like conserve my energy going up the hills and then try to run faster on the flats and the downhills. so you kind of have a more consistent energy output throughout the race. But I just felt like running up the hill, and I just kept running up the hill, and I'm just running past dozens and dozens of people going up this hill, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm being foolish. Like, I'm going too fast. I'm going to crash later in the race, and I'm going to like. But it's because I'd been doing deadlifting training before it, and I just felt strong running up the mountain, and it was a beautiful thing. So yeah, deadlifting.
Yeah, I mean, deadlifting is a compound exercise. It really gets from what they say, the human growth hormone gets secreted as we do compound movements like deadlifts
Mm.
and squats. And another one people talk about as being beneficial to any physical activity you want to do, whether it's playing basketball, running, or biking, any type of stamina is kettlebells. You can train kettlebells and then just get better at whatever else you do automatically, even throwing a baseball. So that's another, compound full body exercise that I'm also interested in. But yeah, so
Mm.
when I do exercises, I do focus on the compound full body exercises. Isolating individual parts doesn't seem to really serve the holistic nature of what we're after here.
Yeah, and my partner Amara, like she's really focused on gym, working out and all that kind of stuff, and she puts a lot of emphasis on the concentric and the eccentric kind of exertion. So,
Mm.
say an example of a deadlift, you don't just stand up with the bar and then drop it. You go back down with the same control and put the bar back on the ground, and that, or you're doing a curl, arm curl, or whatever. Like you're holding the contraction, like you're going. So you're doing a squat, then you're going down really quite slowly. You don't just kind of like let yourself plummet to the ground, but go down slowly, and then you're coming back up. So you're kind of working harder, both both in both directions through the movement, and I find that's quite helpful too to focus on that.
That makes perfect sense. I also want to ask you about your adventure retreats. I mean, it seems like you've been all around the world and you really enjoy hosting people to show them a good time too. Can you tell me a little bit about your retreats and what you guys do during the days and also maybe some of the food you get into?
Yeah, yeah. So, been fortunate the last 2 years to put these retreats on with Amara, and what do we do? So they're called Fruitarian Adventure Retreats. They're in Thailand. They're so far they've only been held in Chantaburi, Thailand, but we are looking at having them elsewhere in Thailand as well. They're 2 weeks each, but we've been running them for 4 weeks each year so far, and so it's 2 retreats back to back. And most people tend to sign up for both retreats. Like, we're not just getting people coming for 2 weeks and leaving. Some people do that, but most people stay for both. We go on adventures every day. We go to do jungle hikes where there's like elephants in the national park. We go every day. We swim in water almost every single day. We try to do it every single day. Maybe there's one day we miss here or there, but we go to either waterfall or a beach or river streams or dams, like dams that are like 30 meters deep or something, of freshwater dams, and we just have epic times. We have group discussions about meaningful topics, not just about diet. To me, it's an all. We go to like fruit orchards. We climb like the highest mountains. We visit the oldest durian trees and like a 300-year-old mango tree, and we just see all the cool stuff and have cultural experiences with the locals. People try a lot of fruits that they've never eaten before, including vegetables they've never eaten before. Flavors we try to use, like Omara is quite handy in the kitchen. She has a really good sense of smell and taste, and so she's great at making dressings and getting flavors right. And she's been we bought a mortar and pestle, and she was making all these kind of authentic Thai things from scratch, with lemongrass and all these kind of curry kind of flavors, and all clean stuff, like hygienic, no salt, no oil, no high fat anything, and just real clean recipes with just whole fresh ingredients, but with delicious flavors. And so we have a chef at each retreat. But as long as Amara's still vibing with it, I think she's going to be the head chef next year, and we'll just have people to support her to make what she decides because she's so good at it. So I love all the food she makes. I never get tired of the adventures we run. I do love sharing the experience with people. I love when people come back. Some people come back to the retreat every year. Some people come back like 5 or 10 years later. um, and it's always encouraging when people are looking forward to coming back again, and because they love the experience that they had. And I don't promote the retreats much. Because it's really just kind of word of mouth. Like, it's people that know me that I meet at festivals or I meet somewhere, and they're just interested in coming because it sounds fun. And but really the goal is to give people more than just fun, to give them a life-changing experience so they can hopefully incorporate some more healthful choices into their life after they go home, and do it successfully, rather than living, like we're talking before about surviving instead of thriving, like living with ease. Like, why not treat yourself with healthy things? Why, instead of treating ourselves with harmful things, like, animal foods or processed junk foods or whatever people think they need to treat themselves with. Why don't they treat themselves with something that makes them feel awesome? Not just while they're eating it, but afterwards as well. The next day,
Right.
still feel awesome.
The word treat is interesting to me because, you think of the word treat, what comes to mind is usually like a cookie, candy, something processed, and something to keep our mind off of, something that just happened, or maybe it's to celebrate and to continue this high, this artificial high. And treatment also has to do with the medical system and kind of suppressing symptoms.
Yeah, treating disease. Yeah.
Yeah, so I always think about that, and there's got to be more holistic ways to treat, and that's what I love about the raw vegan lifestyle. And I'm very interested in coming on an adventure retreat. I've always been afraid of Asia because I had nut allergies my whole life. I've always been the kid who couldn't eat all nuts, peanuts, walnuts, pine nuts, everything.
Wow.
And from what I understand, in Asia, they use a lot of nuts in their cooking, and the language barrier would have prevented me from, trying to explain I have an allergy and try to find food I can eat. And then they don't even know what allergies are half the time. But now that I've discovered raw veganism, fruitarianism, I'm so excited to go to Asia because I know how abundant the fruits can be.
Yeah.
And how easy it can be, and you're telling me about, having a chef at the retreats, and it's not as hard as it may think, because a lot of the times you're just buying whole delicious fruit and opening it up. And that's like literally the preparation required to feed a bunch of people is just maybe a sharp knife to open up all these durians.
Yeah.
And I love that about the fresh food game. I mean, it really does remind me that, like, oh, this is kind of how we're supposed to do it. You just pick something off the ground, open it up and eat it. It's already perfectly prepared, perfectly flavorful, perfectly amazing. So that, I just want to talk about how amazing fresh fruit is. Like, did it blow your mind too, Grant, when you discovered this, of like, I don't have to cook anything. I don't have to wait. I don't have to do all this chopping. I mean, sometimes you make a salad, you got to do a lot of chopping, but did it blow your mind? Was there a learning curve for you of just being in awe and like discovering this for the first time, and like just how amazing the watermelon could be, how it can feed you for multiple days? Was there a time like that you had to pick up your brain off the ground because it exploded or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's kind of, in a sense, I felt a bit silly because when I was a cooked vegan and I travel, I used to work for IBM, the computer company, as a IT specialist they'd send me traveling around the world sometimes to do some coding for somewhere for somebody, so I'd find myself somewhere like maybe in Tokyo, and I don't speak the language, and I'm there alone, and I'm trying to buy cooked vegan food, and I don't know how to say, is this egg noodle or rice noodle, or is this whatever, is this vegan? So I would just I couldn't go and order any food anywhere. And when I finally went raw vegan some years later, I felt like, wow, like that whole time I completely overlooked fruit as a meal. I just saw it as a snack or something. And it's mind blowing because, like you said, you have your nut and peanut kind of allergies. But you can be quite sure when you peel a banana that it doesn't have any nuts inside it. It's a safe food. And we can recognize our food because it hasn't been, like a chef in a restaurant can take rotten tomatoes and add enough garlic, salt, sugar, oil, and do magic things to it, and you could eat it and say that's delicious. Like literally, they can mask the rotten things that would never pass your senses as a raw vegan. Like if you gave me a rotten tomato and said, "Here, try this," it would never get in my mouth because firstly I would see with my eyes that it's rotten. Secondly, if I got past that because I was in a rush, I would smell it before it even gets close to my face that it's rotten. Thirdly, if it got in my mouth, I'm going to taste that it's rotten before I swallow it. And if I swallow it, I'm going to vomit it back up because my body doesn't want rotten food, and it's completely repulsive, and my body knows to get rid of it as soon as possible. So my body's going to vomit it back up for me because my senses failed me, and my body is smart enough to have another mechanism. So, but a chef can turn that rotten tomato into something that you'll consume and be happy to eat. And so, my experience with vegan restaurants was that there was many times where my experience with restaurants that offer vegan options but are not vegan establishments is that you're always getting contaminated food, cross-contaminated, because people working there aren't vegan. So they don't have full respect for like keeping cutting boards separate and clean or all this kind of stuff. So, as a cooked vegan, you're just open to all kinds of contamination and problems
Yeah, and preservatives, and artificial additives. Like I'm big
yeah.
on ingredients. I've always had to read ingredients labels
Mm-hmm.
because of my allergy, and so I got really good at identifying preservatives, sodium benzoate, citric acid, things
Yeah.
like different acids. And with raw vegan, there's so few ingredients. I love it. I've always looked for low ingredients, and now it's like watermelon. There's no ingredients label needed because you can see what it is.
I remember my mind being blown one time, like when the thing was, I didn't eat bananas until I was 25 years old because I had an allergic response as a child to it. So I just stopped eating them, and I kind of developed like an almost phobia towards them, like that they were repulsive, and I would be like, banana, get it away from me, that kind of thing. And so I just accepted that I was allergic to them, didn't eat them. But then as an adult, and I started getting into the swimming training after I went vegan, I saw my friends were eating, after the swimming sessions, they were eating like one or two bananas, and they were better swimmers than me. They were seemed to be recovering faster, and I'm like, I'm missing out here. I need to figure out this banana thing. So I started forcing myself to eat bananas, and I'd just have one bite. This is long before I'd heard of eating raw, and I would take a bite of a banana and just pull some crazy faces, but then I'd have another bite, and after some weeks passed of doing that, I kind of got used to it and became somewhat normalized and overcame my phobia. But then when I heard the Perfect Health Program by Doug Graham the year before the 80-10-10 diet got released, so that would have been in 2005, and he's having lectures like saying things like how much fruit is too much fruit and all that kind of thing. And I'm listening to it and I'm like, I realized that in my head I had this thing where I thought, one banana is good. 2 bananas is a lot. And if I had 3 bananas, well, I'd probably vomit. And I'd never eaten 3 bananas in my life to know that. But why was that belief there? I don't know.
Right.
I guess I just felt full after 2, maybe because I wasn't used to eating them. But then after I heard Doug's Perfect Health program, the next day I went out and bought all these ripe bananas, and I ate 13 ripe Cavendish bananas in one
Yep.
sitting, having never eaten more than 2 before. And I was like, well, there goes that myth. There goes that false belief in my own mind. And I find a lot of things we propagate them ourselves. We keep these beliefs running within ourselves.
We do. Yeah, it's a lot of narratives, a lot of stories. And if you ask yourself, where do they come from? You don't always have a clear answer.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of times the stories are completely made up and false. The most common one I hear is fruit has too much sugar. You're literally subconsciously rejecting, the compound that your body requires to fuel itself.
Yeah,
So it's a weird self-sabotaging, narrative.
yeah, and people are afraid of the sugars because they're having too much fat is a common issue. Because if you're having high fat and high sugar, yeah, the sugar is a problem because of the fat, because you can't get the sugar out of your blood. So you're going to end up with diabetes or, certainly ups and downs of blood sugar.
Yeah, could you explain that a little more? Like, because I think that's really important. You did allude to low fat a few times, but the fat and the sugar being a complication. Can you kind of just go into that a little deeper?
Yeah, I mean, they call them blood sugar metabolic disorders, things like diabetes, but actually they're really, like, type 2 diabetes is really a fat consumption disorder. You can have as much sugar as you like if you don't have too much fat in your bloodstream. So what happens is if you eat overt fats, like, whether it's any animal food has lots of fat in it, or dairy products and all that kind of stuff, but also the raw vegan kind of equivalent of avocado, having a lot of avocado or coconut meat or things like that. Um, that fat, when you eat it, some of it in the small intestine goes directly into the lymphatic system, and others go directly into the blood. Like the short chain fatty acids, medium and long chain. Some of them go into the lymphatic system, and they can get lost in the lymphatic system and maybe get dumped out of there like even 24 hours later or 12 hours. It can be a long time, but certainly 12 hours later. And there's examples where people eat a high fat meal, so they're trying to go from a standard diet of meat and vegetable kind of diet, and they're trying to transition to eating more fruit. So they have fruit for breakfast, and then they say, "Why do I feel tired after breakfast? After I eat a meal of fruit, fruit's supposed to energize me. It's got all this sugar. Why am I feeling tired?" And the reason they feel tired is because the fats from the night before in their meat and vegetable kind of meal, with all the whatever gravy and all these things, um, and butter on their potatoes, and so the high fat stuff, the fats that go through your lymphatic system are only getting into your bloodstream the next morning, and it's meeting up with the sugars from your breakfast, which are fast to go through your system and get straight into the blood, because there's not much to digest when you eat ripe fruit. So that gets in quickly, and then the fats are in the blood at the same time. And what happens is the fats coat things in your blood. So the blood sugar, or the blood glucose, more accurately, in your blood gets coated in fat, and then the insulin that your pancreas releases to take excess blood sugar out of your blood also gets coated in fat, and it can't do its job because it never meets up with the blood glucose to take it out to your cells, because everything's kind of glazed in fat. And the cell receptors where the insulin is supposed to escort the blood glucose molecule out and to get into the cell, that cell receptor is blocked, is coated with fat as well. And fat also makes your blood kind of thicker and stickier, so it flows more like a traffic jam, peak hour kind of traffic, rather than just flowing like live blood It's delivering things that matter, like oxygen on the hemoglobin. So all that stuff gets slowed down when you have high fat in your blood. And the insulin can't function correctly because it's being coated in fat and it can't meet up with the sugar and take the sugars out of the blood, which is its job. So your blood sugar stays high, and that feels horrible until such time as the fats start to break down a little bit, and then by then you've released additional insulin because you've had this lasting high blood sugar thing. So your brain keeps telling your pancreas to release more insulin. So it keeps doing that, but it's not effective, so it does more. And then when the fats do start to break down after some time, there's too much insulin in your bloodstream now for the amount of sugar, for the amount of blood glucose in your blood. So too much of the blood sugar gets taken out, and then you have a crash. So the high fat problem with sugar, like high fat and high sugar at the same time in the blood, is going to cause these high blood sugar and then super low blood sugar. The extreme case would be a diabetic coma, where you don't have enough blood sugar to stay conscious.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a very real thing. And people have type 1 diabetes where they their pancreas is damaged and they're not able to produce enough insulin without taking insulin. But that's different to type 2 diabetes, where it's basically caused by your diet. So if you're eating a high fat, high sugar diet, that's the classic, like ice cream. It's high sugar and high fat all in one. It's all the things that are most delicious, decadent things are all high sugar, high fat mixed together.
Right, and they cause the most problems.
Exactly. And they give so much joy, but only temporarily.
If somebody's hearing this and feels inspired to move more into the raw side and leave some of the cooked foods behind, do you think it's more important for them to just embrace all raw foods, or to actually keep an eye on the fat level and to try to check that? Because I know a lot of raw foodists in the beginning can get into the cashew dressings and the hemp seed butter and the avocados, nuts and seeds for snacks, but then they experience problems like you're just describing. So do you think it's important for, at the very beginning, just to let anyone kind of just get into raw food, have as much as you like, or to really keep an eye on the fat intake?
It's a great question. I'm not sure that there's a direct answer that's like, would work well for every single person, because say someone gets into raw and they try the high fat thing, they feel terrible, and then through experience or perhaps necessity, they then avoid the high fat because they've experienced how horrible it is. Then they stay kind of clean and straight and narrow. Or you could have other people, like one friend comes to mind who I won't name, who was raw vegan for like 8 years, and then he, in recent months, switched, and now he's eating all kinds of like even animal foods and whatever. Because when he went raw, he didn't really he did it so kind of seemingly pure and simple, without any sense of ethics, and so he didn't have that motivating factor. But so he's going back and experimenting now, and he's gone off the deep end into like eating animals again. I feel like there's a critical window where where they're open to change, and they're open to doing better, and they're willing to make an effort and learn things and read things and study things. But then when they have problems, some people get really disillusioned, and so what works for somebody to not end up disillusioned may not work for somebody else. Like I personally, for me, it was important to close the door on cooked food, because when I opened that door again, it slammed it just opened wide, and it was like, bring it on. I'm off the wagon. Let's what can I eat? I'm going to eat every vegan thing every like cooked vegan food that I didn't have before. because I've gone off raw. So while I'm here, I might as well make the most of it and hurt myself as much as possible and continue my path of escapism. Um, but that, they were lessons I had to learn. But
No, that's huge. I think learning the lesson, like going through it yourself to learn the lesson experientially, which is what I'm doing now. I'm learning. I've allowed myself to eat whatever I want,
mm,
if it's vegan, pretty much. And yeah, I now know how it feels to eat too much fat, to eat too much salt, to eat too much cooked food, and I'm starting to think that too much is even a little bit for some of these things. But we also don't want to develop fear around
mm,
food and like orthorexia. So if you're coming into
for sure.
this new mindset or lifestyle, I wouldn't treat fat as the enemy. Maybe it is good to experiment, have as much as you like, and just see how it makes you feel, and then in your body kind of what to feed yourself.
Yeah. I think universally there's no substitute for educating yourself. Um, you can go to fruit festivals all the time and go to retreats and just eat things that other people make for you, but you need to at some point learn how to feed yourself, which means how to get good quality produce, how to look after it, manage it at home so it doesn't spoil, um, how to make sure it ripens properly so it's not a bad experience to eat. Trying to when you go to the market, how do you pick buying what's in season that tastes the best versus buying unripe specialty things and wasting a lot of money on food that's not good quality. I don't know, just learning basic recipes, learning food combining, learning just like basically at some point you can't rely on strictness with willpower, discipline. You've got to come to a point where you're making choices because you value them, because it's what you truly want, and you're not afraid to do it. And you're not living with FOMO or fear of missing out of something. There's things that I haven't eaten in my life that are supposed to be like really amazing, like freaking like mind blowing experiences, and I have no desire to taste them. Um,
Right.
it doesn't matter. Like it just doesn't matter. It's like when I've had if I eat a meal of bananas, um, and I go right to my limit for some reason. I'm not hungry, right? I'm totally satisfied. And then someone brings me the best durian in the world, the best fig in the world, the best. But I'm like actually at that point where I'm completely full. I don't have any interest in that food, no matter how amazing it is, because it's just going to make problems in my body, and that's not why I eat.
Right.
So at some point, I did have a breakthrough many years ago where I realized that my 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 rationale, my reasoning behind eating had changed from just seeking that immediate gratification from eating, from the act of eating, and be like, oh wow, that's amazing, oh my god, but then feeling like crap later and not being able to exercise and needing more sleep and all that kind of stuff, to instead valuing how I feel in the minutes, hours, and even days after eating something being at least
Mm-hmm.
as important as the gratification that I get from the food. Like obviously, everyone eats food that they like the taste of. No one's talking about eating things that are disgusting to eat. Um, like everything I eat is delicious. Otherwise, I don't eat it. But some things are less delicious than others, and I don't have an expectation of never eating Cavendish bananas again because sometimes you get bored of them. I'm happy to just live on bananas and citrus for a little while if I have to. It's not my preference, but if that's what's going, that's the best option available. I'm 100% content and satisfied with that, and not looking for other stuff. Like that's what it is. That's what it is, and I'm good with that. I do prefer to eat than to not eat, but I've also did a 29-day water fast one time with Doug Graham, supervised by Doug
Mm.
Graham, and it was an incredible experience. And again, a kind of personal development, spiritual kind of development, of like just looking within myself a lot more deeply and realizing a lot of things and finding peace with a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah, those experiences are profound. And I love what you said about feeding yourself for the nourishment rather than the stimulation, or for most people, it's entertainment. Eating is just entertainment.
Right.
So it does take a long time to come back into that mindset of, and I say back into it because even though if we've never done it in our life, at one point our ancestors were eating for nourishment and not for stimulation.
Yeah, or for emotional like avoidance, like people, a lot of people eat because of how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like the quantity will change, the frequency will change, the choices will change based on how they feel emotionally.
Oh
If
yeah.
they feel upset, if they feel angry, if they feel lonely, if they feel happy, they feel sad, they feel tired, they feel
Right.
whatever it is, it affects their choices in so many different ways with food. And that's not a good sign that you're eating for the right reasons if your emotions steer your food in so many different directions.
Right. Well, Grant, I feel happy. I feel excited. I feel grateful that you joined me today in this conversation. I think the people are going to love it. And I'd just like to invite you to tell us where people can find you if they want to hear more, maybe direct them to your website. And are there any other events that you have booked this year that people can come meet you?
Yeah, firstly, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's really cool. I had an amazing time meeting you at Woodstock Fruit Festival. You're a cool guy, and you're doing great things, and I look forward to seeing more in that space. And um, my website is rawaussieathlete.com. So RAWAUSSIE athlete.com. My Fruitarian adventure retreats that I run with Amara are on that website. They're only held every kind of April, May timeframe each year because that's when the peak fruit season, especially the peak durian season, is. I don't have any other events that we're running before the end of this year. So, but what I am working on is a book called Fruit Based Life, and it's looking to define this hygienic fruit based raw veganism lifestyle, philosophy, if you will, outlook on life. And so I'm excited to release that within the next maybe month or two. Um, that will be available from my website as well.
Wow,
And
cool.
I am on Instagram. I am on Facebook. You can get all those links from my website. They're up in the banner. My email address is there as well, grant@rawaussieathlete.com. So I'm easy to contact, and always happy to hear from people who are motivated and inspired to make better choices in life.
Right on. And wait, are you at the Dutch Fruit Fest coming up?
Yeah, I will be at the Dutch Fruit Festival, and I am speaking there. And Amara will be there as well, and she's also speaking. She's speaking about overcoming trauma, and together we're giving a talk about fruits and tropical fruits, and I'm giving a talk about based on my forthcoming book, Fruit Based Life.
Amazing. And so the Dutch Fruit Fest, I'm pretty sure this episode will come out just before
Oh,
the
awesome!
fest, but it's July 19th through the 26th of this year.
That's correct. July 19th is the start of the VIP extension. So the festival, just the straight festival, is from the 22nd to the 26th. But if you do the VIP a few days extra where you get kind of, um, more kind of one-on-one kind of time with people like me and Doug and others, then that's an extra, the extra 3 days before from the 19th. Yeah, it's a great festival. I really love it. I've been to every single Dutch Fruit Festival since it began, haven't missed one yet, and hope I don't have to. It's a really beautiful experience. Very kind, sweet people there, and of all places, in the Netherlands.
That's great. Well, that should be a fun time. Enjoy your time there. And I'm looking forward to reading your book. That sounds like it's coming out pretty soon.
Yeah, we can maybe do a book exchange. I'm interested.
That'd be great.
I only just found out about yours. When you sent me the invite for this podcast, I looked up your site and saw your book. I don't remember you talking about it at Woodstock, so it looks awesome. Yeah, it looks
Thank
really
you. I'm about to send you the PDF version just as a thanks for doing
Wow.
the show with me.
Fantastic.
But would love to swap a physical.
Yeah, I'll certainly do the same. I'll give you a copy of mine when it's ready.
Love it, Grant. Well, thanks so much. And I look forward to seeing you when our paths cross next.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Seth.
Big ups to my guest today, Grant Campbell. Everybody go to rawaussieathlete.com to check him out, see what he's got going on. And as always, you got sethbalin.com for all your radical health needs, podcasts, books, PDFs at the library. As always, we got the PDF version of the Fruit Companion available. You want to be a little more like Grant? You want to learn how to pick out the best fruits in the right season and know what to look for? Then pick up your copy of the Fruit Companion. You can get the PDF download directly to your tablet, phone, computer, and always have that resource with you on the go. Right on. Thanks for listening, everybody, and let me know if there's any topic that you'd like me to explore within this realm or any other feedback you got. I'm open. Much love. Peace out, y'all.